So then, now we've done the HTML template, now we can head over to app.js and start to hook this up with the JavaScript. So the first thing I want to do is create an array inside here, and this array is going to be called correct answers. Now this array will store all of the correct answers of the quiz. Now how are we going to store these? Well, we're going to store them as the actual values that each input field has. So for example, in each question we have two input fields, right? And they're both radios. Now one has a value of A and the other B, A and B, and in each case either A is going to be correct or B is going to be correct. So we're going to do an array of 4 values because there's 4 questions, and in each of these pockets inside the array we're going to store either A or B. Now in our case all the correct answers are B. They're all the second answer. So what we can do is just say the correct answers are going to be B, and make sure these are in capitals, the same as we did over here. We used capitals. So B, and then B again, and then B. Now if you changed the order of the correct answers inside the HTML, just make sure you update the correct answers over here in case some of them are now A instead of B. So then there's our correct answers, and that's what we're going to compare the user answers against later on. Now first of all, we want to attach an event listener to the form to listen when a user has submitted the form. So let's grab first of all the form. So we'll say const form is equal to document.query selector, and inside here we want the quiz -form. That was the class we gave to the form. If we take a look up here, we can see that class right there. Okay, so we have that reference. Now we can say form.add event listener, and we're going to listen for a submit event. Then we want the event inside the callback function, so we'll pass through that parameter, and inside here the first thing we want to do is prevent the default action. So let me say e.prevent default, because remember the default action is to refresh the page. We don't want that. So after this, what do we want to do? Well, we want to start to create a score for the user based on their answers. So the first thing I'll do is create a new variable, let score equal to 0. I've used let because we might update this if we find out the user has some correct answers, but by default we start it at 0. So then we want to actually find out what the user answers are. So let's say const user answers are going to be equal to a new array, much like we did up here. Now then, the way we get these different values that are user inputs is by just saying, first of all, get a reference to the form, which we have right here. Then we want the name of the particular input field that we're currently trying to get the value for. So we'll start with Q1. So we'll say Q1. Remember, that was the name attribute right here on these input fields. So when we say form.q1, it gets us a reference on these 2 input fields right here. Now, when we say we want the value from this, what it does is look at whichever one is checked over here. So for example, if this one is checked, then what it's going to do is get us the value of this input field, which will be B. If this one is checked here for Q3, then it's going to get us the value of this input field, which is A, etc. So that's how these radio buttons work. So what we're going to do is get the value from Q1. I'm storing it in the first position in the array. Then we're going to do the same thing for the second position, but this time it's going to be Q2.value. Then we want the form.Q3.value, and then we want the form.Q4.value. So now we have all of those different values that a user enters inside this array. That makes sense, right? Okay. So now we have those, what we could do is compare them to the correct answers to see how many the user gets right. Because these are eventually going to be either A or B, A or B, A or B, A or B. So if a user has all Bs and we compare them against this, then obviously that's 100%. But if they have 2 As and then 2 Bs, then that is 50% correct. So that's what we're going to try and work out now. So how are we going to do this? Well, first of all, let's do a little comment to say check answers, and then underneath that what we'll do is take the user answers and we're going to cycle through them using a for each method. So then user answers dot for each, and for each one we apply a callback function. Now this callback function is going to take in the answer, and it's also going to take in the index. We've seen this. We can take two parameters here. The answer is the actual value that we iterate each time around, and the index is the position in the array. So 0, 1, 2, 3, because we're going to need that in a minute to get the index of this array right here to compare this with this with this, etc. So anyway, we're taking those two parameters into this callback function. So inside this callback function, what do we now want to do? Well, we want to check if this answer that we're currently iterating, whether it's this one, this one, this one, or this one, is equal to the equivalent position in this array. If they are equal, those two values, then what we'll do is increase the score. If they're not, we won't touch the score. So then we'll say if, and we're going to take the current answer that we're iterating currently, and we're going to see if that is equal to, so triple equals, the correct answers, which is this array right here, but we want to select a particular position in this, and that is going to be the index, because that will be the position of this answer, and these marry up, right? So let's pass in the index right here. So when we first come to this for each and we fire the first callback function, the answer will be this value and the index will be 0. And we're saying, is this value, for example, A, equal to correct answers and position 0, which is B? Well, they're not equal, so it wouldn't fire the code block right here. But if this was B and this is B, then they are equal and it would fire this code block. So when that's correct, what I want to do is take the score variable that we created and set to 0 initially and add 25 to that. There's 4 questions, so each one is worth 25%. Obviously, if you had more questions, you could amend this to a different percentage. Okay, so now we're doing that for each answer, and now we should have, after this, an overall score that the user has. So what we'll do for now is log this to the console. I'm going to say console.log the score. So let's save this and preview this in a browser and hope it works. So what I'm going to do is just refresh first of all, then I'm going to come down here and I'm going to choose first of all incorrect answers. So this is incorrect, this is incorrect, incorrect, and incorrect. Now if I open up the console, then I press submit, we should see 0 over here for the score, because if they're all incorrect, then we're never adding anything to the score. So if I submit, we see 0. Okay, so now let's create a couple of right answers. So this one and this one are now going to be correct answers, meaning when we compare them over here, for those two answers, this should be true, and therefore we should add 25 for each one of those answers to the score. So we have 2, so that should be 50 that we see over here now. So 50. Now if we add another, then it should be 75, and another, it should be 100. Take one off, and it should be 75. Take another couple off, it should be 25. And then finally, the other one off, 0, because they're all incorrect now. So I hope that all makes sense. That's kind of like the first step of the JavaScript done. What we've done is attach an event listener to the form to listen for that submit event. Then we've prevented the default action. We've set a local variable score equal to 0 to begin with. Then we've got the user answers from each input field. We've cycled through those, and for each answer, we've also got the index of that answer, and we've compared that answer with the equivalent index in the correct answer array over here. Now, if they're the same, we add 25 to the score, meaning an extra 25%. If they're not the same, we don't touch the score. And then finally, we log out the total value of the score after this has all been calculated at the end. So that's step 1 of the JavaScript done. In the next video, what we're going to do is actually show the scores on the screen up here.